Hey guys, welcome back to the Calvinist Contradiction. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, but we're still continuing on our um, series of where is Calvinism in the opening narrative of the Bible. And we're doing this because if Calvinism is the true interpretation of the biblical narrative, then it should be clearly, plainly, coherently, consistently seen in the text, not have to be derived from in between the verses, not have to be assumed that it's just there, not have to need Calvin or Henry or Pink or any of these guys, his commentary to be able to find it. It should be plainly and clearly and consistently brought forth in the text. And we have proved this over and over with how we feel our interpretation, our provisional interpretation of the text, which starts in Genesis 3. It actually starts in Genesis 1, but where we can see it in Genesis 3 and then carried on. Or, our view of sin, where it comes from Genesis 3. It's propagated even more across the world in Genesis 6. And then finally, it comes to a head in Genesis 12, where God kind of hits the restart button with Abraham in the next chapter. And so that's how biblical theology is done. But today we are asking the question, where is Calvinism and the tenets of Calvinism in Genesis 36 and 37? And I'll explain why we're doing two chapters here in a minute. But first, subscribe, share these messages of God's love with everybody. Please pray about joining our ministry over here financially or prayerfully. We're in the Near East, we're in Asia Minor, and we have opened up several churches. We're sharing the love of Christ with people that are coming to the Lord. We've been here for 10 years. And so if you would like to give to our ministry, there's a 501c3 that we're sent through, so it's tax deductible, or you could give directly to our PayPal. The link is in the description. And then also, I just wanted to say, sorry, I haven't been jumping on here as much. We are working on several books that we would like to make available to you guys as well. And so I have a book about Calvinism and Islam, how they're strange bedmates. I have a book about Calvinism, kind of dealing with the, how do I say this? The ridiculousness of Calvinism, but through poems. And so sometimes it's hard for us to think about theology because when we think about theology, when we think about the Bible, we put it in a different place. We don't think of it as literature. But the whole purpose of this is to critically think about Calvinism through poems. So it's one step removed. So maybe you can think about it a little bit different. And then I have, which is almost done, will be the first one coming out, a Christmas devotional, 4-week devotional about the ancient Near Eastern Hebraic roots of the Trinity that will be revealed up until Christmas, and then Christmas it pulls everything together. And so why are we doing two chapters today? Well, basically because one's pretty boring and it's just genealogy. We're going to hit on it a little bit, but I'm not going to read through everything. And then we're going to move on to Joseph and Jacob. And so Calvinists, I'm not skipping this because there's something Calvinistic in here. Reformed people, there's something Reformed in here. Actually, it's the exact opposite. There's nothing in here that says anything about God meticulously controlling anything, about any of the tenets of T.U.L.I.P, about any of the bologna sausage theology. The stuff that I'm going to pick out here at the beginning, and then it's just all just genealogy. And so we're looking at the Bible through its original context, which is that of the ancient Near East, and we're asking the question, where is Calvinism? Or are these guys Calvinists? Or did these guys think of Calvinism? Did they think of Reformed theology, doctrines of grace, T.U.L.I.P systematic, whatever shamalama ding dong name you need to give it to make yourself feel better about the tenets that it puts forth, that God's a rapist monster, glory hog, selfish, being for his own glory. He does everything. And then you give it all these different names. And so however you want to parse that, we're talking about Calvinism proper. We're talking about the glory hog, the God who hurts people at other people's expense. He does everything, and you're not supposed to ask any questions or say anything because it's for his glory. And who are you, oh man? That's go look at all the other videos. That's our definition. That's how we surmise everything. And so if that is the case, if God does do everything for his own glory, he's meticulously controls everything. So we'll just set the basis here where in the Calvinistic worldview, Reformed worldview, as unimaginable as it might seem to us today, that from the killings of Dennis Rader, where he ate people, to the death camps at Birkenau and Auschwitz, where they killed millions of Jewish people, to even the rape of young children, it's not God allowing this, it's performing it, he's doing it, and it's for his own glory to boot. And that is not me saying that, that's John Piper. His ministry, it's John Piper's ministry, Desiring God. It's a quote from their website. And so let's just start. This is 36. We're only going to go to verse about 6 in this. And it's now, these are the records of the generations of Esau. Then there's a little bracket there, and it says, which is Edom. So they're giving people information. This is an editorial note here. Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan, Aha, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Olamah, the daughter of Anah, and the granddaughter of Zibinah the Hittite, and also Bashimath, Ishmael's daughter, the sister of Hebothia. Adah bore Aphizah to Esau, and Basemath, and Renu, and Obilamah, and Jushu, and Jamal, and Korah, and these are the sons of Esau who were born to him in the land of Canaan. And so this is not what any of the other people are doing. They're not taking daughters from this. Abraham forbids this. Isaac forbids this. Jacob, he doesn't do this. I guess he doesn't do this. He goes back to Laban and stuff like that. And so we see Esau, he does this. He just goes, he takes the Canaanite women and the daughters of Ishmael. And so right there, we're to believe that this is God doing this. It doesn't say this. Actually, in these two chapters, there is no place where it's mentioning God at all. And so it doesn't ever mention it, but we're just supposed to infer and assume that he's actually controlling everything when the narrative is going to tell us the exact opposite. Then Esau took his wives. So who did this? Why doesn't it say? And then God made Esau take his wives, because that's meticulous control, and that's how the Bible's supposed to be rendered anyway, but it never says that in 36 chapters now. Then Esau takes his wives, his sons and his daughters, and all of his household, his livestock and his cattle, and all of his good, which he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to another land far away from Jacob. Remember, a lot of this stuff that he's getting, he already had, but then Jacob gives him a ton more. And so for the property, so why did they do this? Because Calvinists, it's because he was meticulously controlled before the foundation of the world and decreed to move. The text never says this. This is them reading Romans 8 and 9, and then they place it back in the text. And of course, it's so clear and so coherent and so obvious in the text that the only way that you'll ever get this naturally is if you're reading Calvin's commentary, and shame on you because you're not doing that. No. It's because why? The Bible tells us so. It says Esau, he takes all this stuff. Why? It tells us. So that's that's basically what we're saying this whole time, is when God does something, the Bible tells us. Why? Because the Bible wants us to know what God's doing. We're not supposed to automatically think that he's doing everything, even raping young kids, as sick as it is, and even sicker that these Calvinist people say, oh, that's for his own glory. And, who are you, old man? It's nasty. It's gross. It's trash heap theology. And we're saying, place it in the toilet and flush, and then get a new theology which will hold water. And so here, why does he do it? Not because he decreed before the foundation of the world, before he was ever born, and did all this bologna sausage theology placed in here from Romans 8 and 9, which Calvinist does automatically. It says here, for their property had become too great for them to live together, and the land where they sojourned could not sustain them because of their livestock. So where is that statement in your theology? Where can your theology literally hold that statement, Calvinists? Make it easy for you. We're within 10 minutes. We're asking you a question here. Where does your theology have anything for this? Because God decreed it before the foundation of the world. No, it doesn't say that in the text. The text says before the property became too great for the land to literally sustain. But that can't be in your systematic. What the Bible plainly and clearly and consistently puts forth for us to be able to understand about why he moves here. He's taken a bunch of these ladies. He's done all this stuff. Jacob's persuaded him. There's nothing. This is all not in your theology, but this is all what the Bible says. Okay? So it tells us right here what's going on and the purpose behind it. Just like we've told you a bunch, we don't have to try to assume that God's just doing everything, because the Bible tells us when God does everything, because the Bible's trying to relate to us to be able to know who God is. Not because he just, before the foundation of the world at some magical time decrees for you to know everything. And then, God writes Anton, what is it? Antion, whoever out there who corrected me, Antion LaVey's Bible, Satanic Bible, is the same on the same par as this in the Calvinistic worldview, because they can't say anything else. He wrote that for his own glory. The sickness, the depravity that is in there is just God, I guess, spouting off his perverse mind. What problem can you have with pornography, Mr. Calvinist, Mrs. Calvinist out there? What problem do you have with abortion out there? This is all God doing for his own glory. He loves it. He gets glory from this. He does it. He wants to do it, and he does it. That's the point. So we're going to stop there. And then, so it says, and Esau lived in the hill country of Seir, and Esau is Edom. Okay, so that's where it comes from. We're going to skip to the next chapter, which is 37, and we're going to hop in here. Hopefully we can do all this within about 30 minutes. But we're going to talk about Joseph. You can go in there and you can read. Literally, it's just a bunch of stuff. You can see for yourself that the name of the city, it just, gives you some editorial notes. It's the name of the city. This is where these people came from. There's a weird part in there, 24, that these are the guys who were found in the wilderness by the donkey. I'm not sure where that comes from. I don't think it comes from anywhere in the Bible. So probably, Second Temple period text that they're referring to there. And then the last statement here is, this is 3643. These are the chief of Edom. And then an editorial notes placed in here, that is Esau, the father of the Edomites, according to their habitations in their land of their possessions. And obviously this is in here because they're going to talk about the Ishmaelites and Esau and those people here in this text. And so it's privy to the biblical narrative, because everything is. It's not just placed in here, decreed before the foundation of the world, so that nobody could understand, because you can't understand it if you read it unless God has already revealed it to you. It's a biblical narrative. It's making sense and building upon itself because it's literature. And literature, by definition, is a human communicational device so that you can understand what's going on. There's different forms of literature. There's story, there's proverbs, there's I have my favorite one, which is Jonah, which is displayed right here. It's in my host language, it's stuck in my brain, but it will come up. But there's different types of literature, and so this is just historical account that's telling us what's going on. They're going to make reference to it. So let's get into this. 37. Now Jacob lived in the land where his father had sojourned, in the land of the Canaanites. And these are the records of the generation of Jacob. Joseph was, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flocks with his brothers, and while he was still a youth, along the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, so his father's wives, so his stepbrothers, and Joseph brought back a bad report about them to the father. So who did this? God, before the foundation of the world. We're supposed to think that, even though God's never mentioned here in these two chapters, but we're supposed to just think that. No. He did this because he loves his father. And now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and because he had made him a violet-colored tunic. And so why does Jacob love it? Because God meticulously calls him and decreed him before the foundation of the world to love him? No, it just says he loved him more than his other brothers. Is this a good thing? No, I have kids myself, and you shouldn't love one more than the other. But for a Calvinist, yes, because they believe that God loves them, especially over everybody else, which is the Pharisaical view, which we've talked about a ton on this channel. And so I am loved more than everybody else. And in the Calvinistic system proper, you don't need to share the gospel, because what can that do? You don't need to pray, because what can that do? You don't need to do anything that the Bible puts forth, because it's anti-Bible. It's actually anti-Christ when you get into it and you look at the Christ who gave himself for everybody. The Calvinist God he does everything at the expense of everybody, rapes kids at the expense of his glory, or at the expense of these kids being raped, it's for his glory. And so it's like a vampiric God, is what we've talked about, taking life, taking innocence, taking everything from people for his own glory. It's sick. It's disgusting. And so his brothers saw that the father loved him more than his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on a friendly term. So before the foundation of the world, these guys God meticulously made to hate their brother. No, it says when they saw. So there's these, there's these conjunctive things that tell us why, what's going on. They saw, maybe that's not the right word, conjunction, conjunction, junction, which your function is to put two things together. So I don't think it's this, but it's, I can't remember. You guys can help me out in the comments. It's a, maybe a clause. Why? Why do they hate him? Not before the foundation of the world. Never says that. Not because God meticulously controlled that. It doesn't say that. It's because they saw. And we see this a lot in this chapter. And hated them, could not speak friendly to them. Then Joseph had a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. And so there you go. He has a dream. What's the point of a dream in a Calvinistic worldview? Well, nobody knows, because he can't do anything. Either God predestined it before the foundation of the world, and then he meticulously controlled him to have this dream, and then tell them so that they hate him more, and then, boast in his dream and everything that we see. Or what's the purpose of it, Calvinists? What's the purpose of prayer? What's the purpose of a dream? What's the purpose of persuasion? What's the purpose of any of these things that we keep asking you about, but nobody's answering them on the channel? And so why do they hate him even more? Because of the dream, not because God meticulously controlled it. And when he said to them, please listen to the dream and I have had, for behold, there were seven. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf rose up and also stood erect. And behold, your sheaves were gathered around them and bowed down to my sheaf. And then his brothers said to him, are you actually going to reign over us? Are you really going to rule over us? And that's why before the foundation of the world, God meticulously made them say them and then made them hate him even more. No, it says, so because he said this, so they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And then he still had another dream and related it to his brothers and said, lo, I have still another dream. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 7 and 11 stars were bowing down to me. And he related it to his father and to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said, why are you doing this? You're meticulously controlled before the foundation of the world to do this, but I am going to complain about it anyway, like all the Calvinists are going to do 5,000 years later about all the things that they begrudge all over the earth, i.e. abortion, i.e. pornography, i.e. Sexual depravity, i.e. Homosexuality, whatever it is. No, that's not what's going on here. He didn't rebuke him because he was meticulously made to do this. He was rebuking him because he thought he was being boastful. It says, and his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream that you have had? Shall God make me before the foundation of the world do this? Or your mother? So the mother's still in the picture. I think we talked about her a couple things back where she died, but this is going back in time and telling a story. And your brothers actually come and bow ourselves down to the ground. His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept these sayings in his mind. And then his brothers went to the pasture and his father's flocks in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, are not your brothers pasturing the flock of Shechem? So Israel said to Joseph, not God made Israel say to Joseph, but Israel said to Joseph, come and I will send you. Not God's meticulously making me. God wants me to send you. God, I can't do anything but send you, because he's a Calvinist, right? He knows he's privy to this information. So, and the biblical writer who's writing this is privy to this information because Calvinist is so clear and plain, and this theology is so apparent in the text that even Muhammad was able to grab it and pick up on it, as our brothers and sisters in the comments have said. It's so apparent in the text that you can't see it without John Calvin's or Henry's commentary, but Muhammad, who got all of this stuff from a demon in a cave, he was able to pick up on it. It's not the same demon who's gave us the Calvinistic systematic that is the strange bedmate with Islam and not with Christianity proper, provisionalism, even the broader, just Christianity proper. Don't look over there. Don't look at the demon behind the curtain. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. The king with no clothes. Don't look at that. We'll just keep on going on with some garbage theology that makes no sense. No. It says, I will send them to you. I will send you to them. And he said to them, and Joseph said, I will go. Now God's making me go before the foundation of the world. And then he said to him, now go now and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flocks, and bring the word back to me. So that he sent him to the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. So he asked, he went. Right? There's nothing in here about God meticulously controlling any of this up until this point. A man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field, and a man asked him, what are you looking for? And he said, I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me, please tell me where they are pasturing the flock. And the man said to him, they have moved from here, for I have heard them say, let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. And so we can know, so we're going to see this. When they saw him coming from a distance, and before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. And so he's already kind of like said bad reports to him. I'm not sure what this right here is going on. He goes to where they're supposed to be. They're not where they're supposed to be. He's wandering in a field. A man tells him, he says, where are they at? He sends them. So while they're still afar off, God, before the foundation of the world, is meticulously controlled them to plot against his life, because we have the murderess, we have the killer, we have the rapist, we have the envious, we have all these things, the lying, the most deceitful God of Calvinism and of Islam here on display. Even though it never says that clearly in the text. No, that's not what we're supposed to come away with. It says, when he saw them from a far distance, before he came to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. Why? Probably because before he tattled on them and told their dad whatever thing they're doing here, where they're not in the right place, and he was wandering around, whatever's going on, whatever they're doing that they're not supposed to be doing, they're most likely like, let's kill this guy. We're already jealous of him. We're already don't like him. They already hate him. And before he told them about a bad report to their father. So this is all biblical theology, all taking the Bible as literature. What have we read before and applying it to the text now? And it makes sense why they're plotting on the life. But Calvinists were supposed to just say, oh, wait, no, God's meticulously before the foundation of the world, even though he says, do not murder, do not kill, do not steal, do not lie. Here he goes, and he is the God of murder. He is the God of stealing. He is the God of lying. He is the God of destruction. Because Satan didn't come, or not Satan, the devil didn't come to kill, steal, and destroy. God came to kill, steal, and destroy. And who are you, oh man, to say anything about it? Because he's the God of He's the devil. He's the depraved God of Calvinism. He's the depraved God and the strange bedmate of Islam. That's what we're saying here. It's a different God. When we come down and we boil it down, and you ascribe all these evil things, these evil actions that these men are about to do, you should know that's actually God before the foundation of the world. He's doing this for his own glory. He loves to rape kids for his own glory. He kills babies in the womb for his own glory. That's you, Calvinist, and that's on your trash heap theology, which again, place, toilet, flush, and then get a new theology that can actually hold water up against these texts, which would be these men are wicked. It has nothing to do with God. That's why God is not in these texts. It's not talking about God anywhere in these texts. It's not saying anything about a meticulously controlling God who's really the rapist and the killer and the murderer and the stealer and the one who kills, steals, and destroys. No, it doesn't say anything like that. Let's look at actually what it says. And they said to one another, here comes his streamer. And now then come and let God kill him, who's meticulously controlled us, who's controlling us to do this before the foundation of the world. No, let us kill. Whose responsibility is this? Not God. God forbid. Sick theology, trash heap theology, stinking dung heap theology is the one who says God meticulously controls these people to do it, where the text clearly and plainly says, let us kill him and throw him into the pits. And we, not God before the foundation of the world, we will say, a wild beast devoured him. So lying, deceit, right here, that's what they're saying. We will be deceitful, not the Calvinist God who meticulously controls, kills, rapes, steals, murders, and lies. for his own glory to boot. Not that. God forbid. Sick theology, I'm telling you right now. It says that we will do all this. They're responsible. They are literally out of their mouth, and the biblical author is saying that it's them, that we are plotting, we are doing, we want to do this. And a wild beast devoured him, and let us see what we will become of his dreams. But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands and said, "Let us not take his life." Reuben further said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay hands on him, that he might be rescued." And then here's here's a little thing giving some information here, that he might rescue him out of the hands to restore him to his father. So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that God meticulously before the foundation of the world, because he loves to strip naked, strip people down. He loves to rape. It's for his own glory that he does these things. He can't get enough of it in the Calvinistic systematic. And there's nothing you can say to, who are you, oh man, to say anything. I want to break in here real quick. In this, William Young said, every Christian cannot say with an honest heart that God is a God of love. Yeah, I guess if you're talking, William, against Calvinism, then yeah, absolutely. They cannot say that he's a God of love. There's no way. The Calvinistic God is not a God of love. And that's why they say love equals hate in Calvinism, hate equals love, because they have to. And then we have Edward, who just said, you're getting smart about Calvinism, but you study Paul and realize that he's a Calvinist. You'll have a lot of second thoughts about Christianity. You're getting smart about Calvinism. When you study Paul and realize he's a Calvinist, you'll have a lot of second thoughts about Christianity. Yeah, I'm not sure what that statement means. Edward, tell me a little bit more. I don't believe Paul. Are you being facetious here? Which you may be. Are you being serious here? But yeah, I don't believe Paul's a Calvinist. I don't think that Romans 1 through 7 says anything about Calvinists. I don't even think 8 and 9 says anything about a Calvinist. And so I think if you hear about Calvinism and that's how you're brought into Christianity, or you're brought into Christianity and then you're indoctrinated into Calvinism, then you'll have a lot of questions and second thoughts when you start reading the Bible in its ancient Near Eastern context, like we are right here. No, it doesn't, my friend. And you know how we know that it doesn't? Make it clear is that Romans 1 through 7 make it absolutely not clear, my friend. And so it's a ridiculous statement to even say that Paul was a Calvinist, because he wasn't. And I'm sorry about that. Sorry to bust your bubble there, but he's not. And so you can answer some of our questions here. Since you're a Calvinist and you want to talk and you can defend them. What is the purpose of any of these? What's the purpose of prayer, my friend? What's the purpose of persuasion, my friend? What is the purpose of any of these things that we have talked about so far here in this? That where can your theology hold up the phrase, for their property had become, so why does Esau leave Canaan? It says, for their property had become too great for them to live together, in the land where they sojourned could not sustain them for their livestock. The answer for Calvinism is, before the foundation of the world, God predestined them to do this, meticulously controlled them to do this. They couldn't do anything else, but that's not what the Bible tells us right there, my friend. The Bible gives us an explanation, a rational explanation for why he has to leave the land. And it says nothing about meticulous control. It says nothing about Calvinism, any of the tenets here, nothing. But we're supposed to read that into the text because of Romans. What are you saying here? 9, baloney sausage, my friend. Get a better theology that can hold up within the biblical text itself in time and space. See, you shouldn't have to read Paul, who's the greatest Calvinist, because he wrote Calvinism, because he wrote Romans 9, which is basically all of Calvinism, and then read it back in all the text. And then show us Paul's Calvinism out of Genesis 3 while you're at it. Show us those tenets of Calvinism, the tenets of T.U.L.I.P in Calvinism in Genesis 3. We'll be waiting. We'll read your response when you're done here, my friend. And so let's jump back in here. And it says, so it came about when Joseph, they stripped him Joseph in his tunic, in the vari-colored tunic that was on him, and they took him. They, not God, made them before the foundation of the world. They took him and they threw him into the pit, and now the pit was empty without any water. And they sat down to eat a meal. So they, nothing about God doing this, nothing about God controlling this, nothing about anything. God forbid that God be the one who plots murder, the one who deceitfully lies. That's the God of Calvinism. That's the God of Islam, to be frank, too. And they sat down to eat a meal. So they're all hunky dory. And then they raised their eyes and look, and behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming to Galilee, and their camels bearing aromatic gum and gall and myrrh, and they were on their way down to Egypt. So here's all the guys that we were just talking about in the last chapter, biblical theology, reading the Bible as narrative in a literature, with a literature mindset. Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it for us to kill our brother, not for God to make us to kill our brother before the foundation of the world, our brother, and cover up his blood? Come and let us," again, the narrative's telling us who's doing this. Calvinist friends out there, not God. It says us, him to the Ishmaels, and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother and our own flesh, and his brothers listened to him. So then the Midianite traders passed by, and they pulled him up out of the pit. They lifted Joseph out. They pulled him up. They lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Thus they brought Joseph into Egypt. So nothing about God here. Nothing about God doing this. Nothing about before the foundation of the world. Nothing about eternal decrees. Nothing about Calvin's baloney. So wait, not Calvin. Edward's saying nothing about Paul's baloney sausage theology that Calvin propagates later. Now Reuben returned to the pit. So here, Reuben wasn't here for any of this. He wanted to save his life. He goes somewhere. Reuben returns to the pit. Behold, Joseph was not in the pit, so he tore his garments. He's upset. He honestly wanted to save his brother. He returned to his brother and said, "The boy is not there. As for me, where am I to go?" So they took Joseph's tunic. So they took the tunic, okay? Not God before the foundation of the world made them. Nothing about God here. They took the tunic and slaughtered a male goat. They slaughtered the goat, and then they dipped the blood in there. And they sent and dipped the tunic in the blood, and they sent the varied colored tunic and brought it to their father and said, "We found this. Please examine it to see whether it is your son's tunic or not." And so, who does this? Who deceitfully lies? Who deceitfully kills, and they send him away and then lies about it to cover it up? Not God. But in the Calvinistic systematic, Edward, in the Calvinistic systematic, any other brother or sister out there who's a Calvinist, it is God who's doing all this. So who's the greatest deceiver of all? Allah in the Quran, and then it is the Calvinist God in the Bible. But for us, it's Satan. It's the devil. He came to kill, steal, and destroy, to lie, cheat, and murder. He came to deceive. He's the greatest deceiver. But in the Calvinistic systematic, it is God, and it's only God. Because it's the demiurge of Augustine's Gnosticism, where there's two dueling, a good power and a bad power. And the good power, actually, which is the Gnostic view, is actually the bad one, and the bad one's actually the good one. And that's how it is in Calvinism. You have God, who is the rapist, murderer, pornographic porn star, because he does all this for his own glory at the expense of everybody else. And then the devil, who's just really obedient to everything God does. He's actually good. So it's the same system. It's just a different word. Gnosticism and Calvinism. Calvinism comes from Gnosticism, and it has way more in common with Islam, with Gnosticism, than it does with Christianity proper. So let's wrap this up and examine it and tell if it's not whether it's your son's tunic. Then he examined it and said, "It's my son's tunic. It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him, and Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." So the deceit works. For you guys who are Calvinists, I guess it's God's he's the greatest deceiver of all. And so, but the Bible never says that. It's this group of boys who were jealous. And as the narrative tells us, all this stuff builds up and then they do this to their father. And so Jacob tore, but you're supposed to respect your mother and father. That's God's command. But here, God's breaking his own commands because they don't apply to God, because it's all just a joke. That's how it is in your systematic. So Jacob tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and loins and mourned for his son many days. Then all of his sons and his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. God made him refuse to be comforted before the foundation of the world, although it never says this in the text. No, we're not supposed to render it that way. We're supposed to read it in its context, which we have been doing. That's why we're saying Genesis 36 informs 37 here. And surely I will go down, not God's making me go down to the pit, in Sheol in mourning for my son. So the father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him to Egypt, to Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard. And that's the end of the chapter. So here's some stuff that is coming up. William Young, Edward Messon, what did an unelected person say to Satan in hell? At least you had a choice. Yeah, there you go, William. At least you had a choice, right? Edward says, I'll leave the Calvinist to defend Calvinism. And if Paul wasn't Calvinist, he's very confused. No, he's not. You are, my friend. And the Jew have the best theology. I'd say it's lacking for sure. And my bread and butter is the Old Testament. I love the Old Testament. I love covenantal theology, testamental theology, how the Old Testament is the Bible for the New Testament writers. And so Paul's only taking what he knows out of the Old Testament and reapplying it in the New Testament. And he doesn't ever, like I said, Romans 1-7 is the exact opposite of what you come to a conclusion in 8 and 9. And then 10 is the exact opposite. We're going to get into Romans. We're not going there yet. We're going to get through Genesis first, but then we're going to go verse by verse and dismantle Calvinism in this bunk view. Sorry, my friend, that Paul's somehow a Calvinist. It's a ridiculous statement. You'll have a lot of what does he say? And then the Jews have the best theology. I would beg to differ. Rabbi Tova Singer and Michael Sokbach destroy all Christianity. Don't think so, my friend. I would say they're lacking. I'd love to hear what they say about Isaiah 52, which they probably don't read in the synagogue because they've kind of stopped doing that. And so, love to hear some Jewish person speak on Isaiah 52. Well, Calvinism says that Jesus is insane. Yeah, of course. Why would Jesus rebuke a town for not believing him if they are predestined to hell? Exactly, William. It makes no sense. It makes the whole Bible bologna sausage. And we know why. Is because Calvinism's from the same demonic spirit that Muhammad received the Quran from. Or however, because I know people out there said, well, I don't believe in that. However, the Quran came and established its doctrines. That's what I deal with. I live in the Middle East all the time. Is the same doctrinal pillars are the same in Islam as they are in Calvinism, and totally different from Christianity proper. And we have a book coming out on the Quran and John Calvin. I haven't gotten the title down yet, but it's in the works. I have a lot of it done. Keep preaching the truth, the Calvinist contradiction. Thank you, my friend. William, personally, I believe Calvinism is the most evil of all religions. Absolutely, my friend, because it makes Satan God and God Satan. It literally does that. The same thing as Gnosticism does, because it's a Gnostic systematic. That's why. I would say I deal with Islam all the time. I live in the most Islamic country in the world. And, Islam's bad. I'm not saying that it's not bad. I don't like Islam. The tenets are super horrible. It's really close to Calvinism, but at least they they have a view of God. And most of our friends who are Islamic, they want to please a God. But Calvinism flips everything around, and you're really just praising the devil. And so our Islamic friends who, God and the devil are separate in that systematic where they're not in Calvinism proper. Calvinism makes God the devil and the devil God. And that is the roots of Manichaeanism, where Augustine comes out of Manichaeanism, which is a Gnostic sect. He was there for 10 years. It influenced him, just like I've lived here for 10 years. It influences me deeply. I'll never be the same from living in the Middle East for 10 years. The same thing with Augustine. Augustine comes out, he's a other father. He's not with all the other Christians to correct him. Nobody else is saying the stuff he says. And then John Calvin quotes almost exclusively from this Gnostic father. That's how you get this bologna sausage, stinking heap of theology, dung heap of theology known as Calvinism today. And so thank you guys for joining. Thank you, William. Love you, brother. Let's keep on sharing the good news of God's love for every man, woman, and child, and stand up against evil things that we believe aren't from God. And we will talk to you later for another episode of The Calvinist Contradiction.